Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today. For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Cedrick. Just a little bit about me. I'm a graduate of Albany College of Pharmacy, the class of 2013, where I obtained my doctorate of pharmacy degree. To date, I've been speaking for about 7 years, and you've just joined us for a series called Self Care Sundays, or rather, the Self Care Forums on Sundays. And so, the initiative behind this is really to promote better health through education. So, each time that we have these forums, we will be joined by various health professionals who will give their 2 cents, their input, their points of view, and certainly share their knowledge with the rest of the audience. And they'll also gladly make themselves available to the audience for further questioning. So please take advantage of this. I am constantly asking, my medical professional friends, my doctor friends to join us and, give their input. And so for those of you who may be shy to ask your doctors and certain questions, please don't be in this forum. So I would appreciate that. So, we will be joined shortly by Tahira Wellman. She is a physician assistant, and she is a huge proponent of this. Unfortunately, Dr. Rashad Sheldon is unable to join us today. And so this is today's presentation is on gut health, particularly how the modern diet is making us sick. So we're going to take a look at those factors that make us sick. So just to give you a brief overview of what we're talking about when we talk about the gut is really a connective tube that starts in your mouth and ends up in your anus. Okay, parts of the human body, but that's what the gut consists of. It's this tube that starts in your mouth and ends up in your anus. And so the thing to understand is that food typically begins in the mouth, it's chewed, goes down through your esophagus into your stomach, where it is chemically digested. And so from then on, it goes into your small intestine, and then large intestine, and then ultimately it is excreted out as a bowel movement. Now, the gut is actually the means by which tissues and organs receive nutrition, because in order for the nutrients from the foods that we consume to be shared to all the cells of the human body and all the organs of the human body, it has to first enter the gut. And so the gut is thus responsible for the breakdown of these foods, the extraction of nutrients. It converts it into energy, and it helps us remove waste from the human body. And so it's important to keep in mind that this breakdown of food, really involves both a physical as well as a chemical process. Now, interestingly enough, Hippocrates is often said to be the father of modern medicine. And one thing he said, over 2,000 years ago, he said all disease begins in the gut. And so research over the past 2 decades is now starting to shed light on what this man meant. And essentially, what research is showing us is that gut health is actually crucial to overall health. Okay, and that an unhealthy gut contributes to a wide range of diseases such as diabetes, obesity, even rheumatoid arthritis, things such as autism, spectrum disorder, depression, chronic fatigue. All of these diseases, okay, they have their genesis in the gut. And so when we can understand the faculties that affect the gut, we can then see what causes or what predisposes us to many of these diseases. Now, there are two key variables that determine our gut health. The first of which is the microbiota, or the gut flora. Now, this is all of the species of germs or beneficial bacteria that live in our gut. And we have a relationship, we have a mutualistic relationship where we benefit from them and their presence, and they benefit from us and the foods that we eat, as well as the gut barrier. That's the other layer to this That's the other variable to our gut health. So we're going to take a look at those. The first factor being the microbiota consists of all of the microorganisms that live within our gut. Okay, much like a healthy garden needs good soil, a healthy gut needs good microbiota. Okay, so the thing to know is that our gut is home to about 100 trillion different microorganisms. And if we had to divide them up, we'd find that we have up to 1,000 different species of microbe living within our gut. As a matter of fact, the human gut has 10 times more bacteria than all the cells in the human body. There's about 30 trillion cells in the human body. Now, the thing to understand is that any disruption in the gut flora, any disruption in these microorganisms, okay, will generally has been linked to different diseases such as autism, depression, autoimmune conditions such as Hashimoto's, irritable bowel disease, type 1 diabetes. And so we have to keep in mind that in order for us to reduce the risk of any of these disorders or diseases, we've got to maintain the integrity of our gut. Okay, so there are benefits that these bacteria, these microorganisms offer us. I'd say these are benefits such as they help with normal gastrointestinal function. They help protect us from virulent infection. So any harmful bacteria or any harmful virus that tries to enter our blood will likely go through our gut. And so the presence of these bacteria, these microbiota, will actually put up a resistance in order to prevent them from entering and sneaking into our bloodstream. They help regulate the metabolism, and they actually make up to about 75% of your immune system. Now, the problem we now face is due to the fact that our modern lifestyle is actually very disruptive to the microbiota. Okay, so there are features of modern lifestyle that can actually contribute to an unhealthy gut. What we're talking about, and we talked about this in the previous presentation, we highlighted this a little bit, but antibiotics, as well as other medications such as NSAIDs that are often used for pain, birth control medications, those things are disruptive to our microbiota. As a matter of fact, the Western diet.
I still took care of my peeps, my patients.
Okay, I would simply ask that everyone please make sure that your phones or your laptops are muted. Thank you so much. There are features of the modern diet, such as the excess consumption of refined carbs, sugar, and even processed foods. Those things also disrupt the gut. We also have low fiber diets. Western diet is known to be low in fiber. We generally do not consume as much, and it's packed full of toxins. And these toxins are things such as industrial seed oils and wheat. And we're actually going to take a look at these whole grains. And there's just lifestyle situations such as chronic stress and even chronic infections. These things, these features of our modern lifestyles, these things are actually disruptive to our gut health. Looking at the other variable, being the gut barrier, this is the wall of defense or the defense wall. This is what determines what gets in and what stays out. Now, just to emphasize, when something is inside of the gut, it's technically considered outside of the body.
Outside of the body.
I know it sounds like, hey, but it's in your mouth, it's in your stomach, it's in your intestines, therefore it's inside of your body. But in reality, because the gut is, this portal that can lead things into our bloodstream, okay, therefore it is considered outside of the body. So when something's in the gut, it's considered outside of the body. In order for that food or that product or that item to be inside of the body, it has to be in the bloodstream. So please keep that in mind. Now, the gut is a hollow tube. okay, that passes from the mouth to the anus, just re-emphasizing that point. Now, the contents, when something is inside the gut, whether it's in the esophagus, in the mouth, in the stomach, in the large or small intestine, no matter where along that tube it is, it's considered outside of the body, even though to us visually it looks like, hey, you ate it, it's inside of you. No, it's actually separated from the bloodstream. Now, what separates it is the gut barrier. Okay. Now, when the intestinal or the gut barrier becomes permeable, what's known as leaky gut, what occurs is large protein molecules will often slip into the bloodstream. Okay. Now, if you look at the illustration before you, as you can see, the cells to the left are what's called a tight junction. Okay, so they're very tightly bound together. They're not allowing anything to slip through, and that's actually what you want ideally. Now, when you look at the rightmost side of the illustration, you see that those cells are actually separated. Okay, there's space in between them for harmful things to slip through and get inside your bloodstream. Now, that we call leaky gut, okay, meaning it's become permeable. It allows things to slip through, things such as toxins, undigested proteins, such as gluten, viruses, bacteria, things that are going to do harm to us. Now, in the situation where you have leaky gut or permeable gut, this the fact that things are slipping through will actually force the body to mount an immune response and attack them. Now, this can be an autoimmune. So we can see things such as food intolerance being manifested. We can see systemic or systematic inflammation. We can see an autoimmune response being triggered by the body in order to try to fight this thing that slipped through and entered the blood. Remember this, folks. The life of the body is in the blood. You keep that in mind. You understand that the body will do what it can to make sure that any harmful substance that enters the blood is dealt with and is dealt with immediately. Okay? So studies show that these attacks can actually lead to the development of autoimmune diseases. So the point to remember is this: any breach or disruption in the mucosal integrity of your gut can trigger a response that can affect your organs and your tissues. Okay. And so this leaky gut can actually manifest as skin problems such as eczema or psoriasis, depending on where it is. Can manifest as heart failure, can manifest as various autoimmune diseases such as celiac disease, Hashimoto's, arthritis, irritable bowel disease, type 1 diabetes. Can actually affect your mental faculties and lead to autism and even depression. Now, let's talk a little bit more about stomach acid. I know we covered that the last presentation, but this is just to reemphasize some of the things that we've learned, because all of these things tie together. Okay, and just to recap, a healthy stomach has what's called a low pH. Okay, it means it's very acidic. Think lava. If you were to stick your hand in lava, you lifted it up, you'd be missing a few fingers because it's so strong, it would have melted your fingers. And so the pH is actually a measure of acidity. So the thing to keep in mind is you want a stomach acid that has a low pH because it means it's got a very strong acid. Now, the reason you want your stomach acid to have a very low pH is because you want it to help break down foods. Now, in order for vitamins and nutrients to be absorbed from foods, that food has to be properly broken down. Okay, so the breakdown and absorption of nutrients it's the main role of the stomach acid. Now, this is crucial for digestion, the digestion of proteins, carbs, and even fats. Now, hydrochloric acid, which is our stomach acid, is released in conjunction with an enzyme called pepsin. Pepsin is the enzyme that's actually responsible for digesting or breaking down proteins. Now, this will be important a little later. Okay. Now, so what are some causes of low stomach acid? Just to recap, because a lot of this stuff we've covered, ladies and gentlemen. There's H. pylori infection, okay, which actually stops acid production when they proliferate in your stomach. There's chronic stress, which studies have shown can actually reduce your production of stomach acid. There are acid suppressing drugs, things such as antacids, H2 blockers, proton pump inhibitors. These are things such as omeprazole, or Prilosec or Nexium or Protonix, things that are over the counter. The overuse of these things, these actually can reduce acid production to near zero. Okay, and there's also another factor, and that's age. What that means is studies have shown that the older we get, the less acid our bodies are able to produce. Okay, so the first thing we want to do in terms of gut health is to make sure that we have a healthy stomach acid, and that's a stomach acid that has a very, very low pH. Now, some of these things that I just mentioned are factors that can lead to a very high pH for your stomach acid, which means your stomach acid is not able to do the job of breaking down food, which leads to the absorption of nutrients. Another factor we have to consider with regards to gut health is enzyme productions. Again, stomach acid is one thing, but there is also the role of digestive enzymes. We mentioned pepsin. Okay, so these digestive enzymes actually help break down larger molecules into smaller molecules in order for them to be absorbed within our bloodstream. We see that there are certain molecules that are meant to digest carbs, such as the breads that we eat. There are other molecules such as pepsin, trypsin, peptidase, that help break down proteins, such as what we obtain from meats that we consume. And there are molecules such as enzymes such as lipase, which helps break down healthy fats from the oils that we consume, and then we're able to absorb the fatty acids. Now, if the pH of the stomach acid is too high, which means it's a weak acid, a lot of these enzymes will not be released. Okay? However, what you want, just to reemphasize, you want a stomach acid that's very low, that's very acidic, because when it's working properly, it's then released in conjunction with many of these digestive enzymes. Therefore, the foods that you eat, such as the breads, the meats, the oils that you consume, are then able to be broken down into simple sugars, amino acids, and fatty acids, which are the building blocks of life, ladies and gentlemen. This is what keeps your body healthy. Any disruption in that cycle or any disruption in that pattern will ultimately lead to the breakdown of your organs or the malfunction of your body in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so poor enzyme production as a result of weak acid will ultimately mean that you are not able to break down the proteins, fats, and carbs that you're consuming. Okay, so what causes low enzymatic production? Well, again, low stomach acid, okay, or weak stomach acid. Another way of putting it, chronic stress. Once again, stress rears its ugly head. It lowers acid production. There's also micronutrient deficiency. Enzymes require coenzymes. Now, these coenzymes are things, vitamins and minerals that help activate these digestive enzymes. So we're talking about things such as vitamin B12, iron, zinc, magnesium, selenium, vitamin C. Okay, any diet that is low in these coenzymes will actually result in impaired or reduced digestion. Now, of course, the Western or stereotypical Western diet consists of highly processed foods, refined and cooked foods. So what we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Western diet contains very little enzymes at all. So the alternative is really to Make sure your diet is jam-packed full of raw fruits and veggies because those are rich in enzymes. If you're consuming the typical Western diet, you'll have the typical Western chronic diseases. And of course, another factor to consider is age. For those of you that are older, you have to understand that enzymatic production declines with age, much like acid production. A third factor that we have to consider when we look at inflammation, when we look at the gut health, is the role of inflammation. Inflammation is the body's response to the presence of harmful stimuli, such as bacteria or pathogen, irritants, or even damaged cell. Chronic inflammation is what ultimately makes the gut leaky. In other words, it makes the gut more permeable. So the difference, one of the reasons why, if you look at the illustration, the cells to the left are tight, form that tight junction that the body needs to have, whereas the cells on the right are very leaky and they're spaced out, is because in the area where you have a lot of permeability, you may have had a lot of inflammation, where those cells have been damaged, so they're not able to form that tight junction. And so when you have an area of your gut that is very inflamed or that is very leaky, things are going to slip through and enter your bloodstream, and your body's going to respond with autoimmune responses, with chronic inflammation. And so this is what we see when you go to your doctors and they diagnose you with a disease or they diagnose you with a disorder. Okay, so we're looking at things such as chronic infections. Okay, the immune system will actually mount an inappropriate, or rather a disproportionate attack against intestinal tissue. So the immune system is actually overreacting. This is why a lot of times for someone who's struggling with, some sort of autoimmune reaction, they need medication because it's just so severe. The response by the body is so severe, it's debilitating for a lot of people. Okay, and so we have to keep in mind chronic inflammation in the gut can lead to various things, such as constipation, diarrhea, gas, bloating, abdominal pain, skin rashes, and even depression. The gut affects every facet of your health, including as far up as your brain. Okay, so what are some common causes of gut inflammation? Well, we're looking at infections such as parasites. You've got opportunistic bacteria, fungi. These infections can cause a low-grade chronic inflammatory condition, which the body is forced to respond. Okay, you've got autoimmune disorders such as irritable bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. Okay, and this is just the immune system responding, okay, by attacking a section of your gut in response to the presence of, let's say, a bacteria, or in response to some sort of damage that has occurred. Okay, again, of course, keep in mind that the Western diet is a trigger for a lot of this stuff. What I mean by that is we consume a lot of gluten and gluten-based products, right? The wheat, barley, rye, and oats. We've been told they were healthy, but not necessarily. There are two ways to look at it. We consume a lot of sugar. We consumed a lot of refined products, refined flour, a lot of processed foods, a lot of refined foods. We also have to keep in mind that we are constantly exposed to environmental toxins, such as pesticides. Now, you've got chemicals such as BPA that have been shown to disrupt our inflammatory cytokine production. Okay, so a lot of these things that we're spraying on ourselves, we're spraying on our grass, that are being sprayed all around us, they're not necessarily healthy. Okay, and of course, you've got intestinal dysbiosis. What that means is you've got an imbalance of good and bad bacteria. So an imbalance of good and bad bacteria can create an inflammatory state. Remember, you want there to be a majority good bacteria. Okay, you've got over 1,000 different species, and those species are actually very helpful. Okay, you have a mutual relationship with them. However, if you allow other species to colonize your gut through the foods that you and I are eating. Remember, it's the foods that introduces these bacteria into our guts. Okay, so if you allow other species of bacteria to colonize your gut, they then begin to change the balance between the good and the bad, and this can lead to gut inflammation. And inflammation damages those cells, makes that area leaky or more permeable. Therefore, more things can slip through and enter the bloodstream, which will then trigger the body to have some sort of autoimmune response, which can lead and manifest, depending on where it is along the gut, into a whole host of diseases. Okay, so just to recap, ladies and gentlemen, here's what we covered. We covered the fact that in order to have healthy stomach acid, okay, you've got to have your stomach acid with low pH. And this is crucial in order for you to break down foods properly and even absorb the nutrients found within those foods. Any disruption in that cycle will actually affect our overall health. There's also a role that is played by digestive enzyme. As a matter of fact, when your stomach acid has a low pH, it's often released in conjunction with many of these digestive enzymes, which also help break down and absorb nutrients, usually in larger molecules, such as proteins, okay? And so things such as protein, fats, and carbs are easily broken down and incorporated into your body. Okay, now the third category that we talked about was the role of inflammation. Okay, this is the body's response to triggers or things slipping through, okay, and entering your bloodstream. Things such as pathogen, irritants, or undigested proteins, or even damaged cells. And so anything that makes the gut leaky or more permeable is a bad thing. Okay, and so chronic inflammation can lead to a whole host of diseases. Now, I want us to start talking about the modern diet, which is really the crux of this presentation. So when we're talking about the modern diet, what are we talking about? Well, when we're talking about the modern diet, we're talking about a diet that is high in grains, industrial seed oils, refined sugar, processed foods, carbonated beverages, and genetically modified organisms. I think we can agree that we all stand guilty of consuming these on a daily basis. But the thing to understand is that we're not here to condemn anybody. I mean, we're all exposed to this. So, but this is why we're dealing with all of these chronic illnesses. They're not natural. They're artificial in the sense that they are caused by the foods that we're eating. Therefore, if we change the diet that we have or that we've adopted, if we simply change those diets, we can drastically improve our health. A lot of these issues go away or they're not as severe. And of course, we live in changing times. You know, we've had the introduction of antibiotics, cesarean birth, an increase in sedentary activity. But there are many positive things in these things. However, we also have to understand that, you know, our diets have changed. And so we went from once having fiber-rich foods to now eating processed, you know, fiber-free options. They're ubiquitous, they're usually plenty, and they are cheap. Okay. Now, there was a study comparing the Western diet to the diet of members of the Hadza group. This is a hunter-gathering tribe out located in Tanzania. These guys live without technology. You know, they're a hunter-gatherer society, so they hunt and they eat what they find and what they kill and everything. But you know, the point is, these tribes of people, they have not changed their ways in hundreds, if not thousands of years. You know, they're perfectly fine living the way they have. But researchers looked at and compared their diets and their health to our diets here in the West. And so what was interesting was the results showed that their gut microbiome, you know, the bacteria that live in their gut, was actually quite different than those bacteria that are found in the gut of modern and Western people. Okay. As a matter of fact, when they looked deeper into it, they found that the Hadza diet, their diet consisted of no processed foods, no refined sugar, and a large dietary intake of fiber each and every day. As a matter of fact, it's estimated that they consume 100 grams of dietary fiber a day. Now, this compares to about 15 grams of dietary fiber for people in the West. Okay. And so what we can conclude from that study is that the Western diet does impact our health. As a matter of fact, the Western diet is actually responsible for us losing key microbial species. Okay. And it leads to a significant increase in chronic disease. Okay. So this is not natural, ladies and gentlemen. It's due to the diet that we've adopted here in the West. The modern diet is packed full of grains, industrial seed oils, refined sugar, processed foods, carbonated beverages, and genetically modified products. So let's take a look at each one of those and see the impact that they have on our health. So first, let's talk about grains. Everybody wants to eat whole grains, or so they say. But when we talk about grains, we're really talking about grains such as wheat, barley, rye, and oats. And the reason we're talking about them as far as being harmful to our health is because these whole grains contain a protein called gluten. Now, gluten is really an umbrella term that refers to a family of proteins known as prolamins. But the thing to understand about gluten is that it's made from amino acids, right? These are the building blocks for that are essential for health. Now, whenever we break down proteins, whether it's from meat or from gluten, we're trying to get down to the amino acids because that's what the body needs. You can think of amino acids as the letters in an alphabet. Okay, you can use these letters and rearrange these letters to form different words. And if you have a lot of letters, you can go from forming words to forming sentences, from forming sentences to writing a page, from writing a page to writing a book. So you need amino acids. They are the building blocks essential for our health. The thing, of course, they are obtained from the foods that we consume. Now, in this case, we've been told all for decades now that you gotta eat whole grain. Whole grain is the best. However, one thing they fail to tell you is that a lot of these grains have a molecule called gluten. And the thing about gluten is that the gluten proteins, the glutenin and gliadin, they're very elastic, which makes them excellent to be used in bread. They give bread that quality, they give dough, that elastic, feeling for the bakers. They can mush it and mash it and shape it into whatever shape that they want to make the dough into. But the thing about these same gluten proteins is that they are highly resistant to protease enzymes. Now, what this means is the role of these digestive enzymes is to break down these proteins into amino acids. The body needs amino acids in order to function and stay healthy. Whereas in gluten products, okay, in these grains, these proteins are the bonds that connects these proteins is very difficult to break. Okay. And so the general idea is that the gluten in these products, it's not being broken down, especially because so many people in the West, so many Americans, their stomach acid is not that strong to begin with. Okay. It's not that low. So you've got millions of people with weak stomach acid. And so when the digestive enzymes are then added in order to further break down these the gluten protein found in these grains, it's just not able to do it. Now, what that means is, ladies and gentlemen, and this is key, is that you're going to have, every time you eat grains, okay, wheat bread or barley or rye or oat-based products, you're going to have undigested or unbroken proteins going through your small intestine. And this, ladies and gentlemen, disrupts or damages your gut. And over time, your gut gets weaker, becomes more permeable, more leaky. And so these undigested proteins will then begin to slip into your bloodstream. And of course, the body is going to react. No, it's going to overreact in its response. Okay, this is why nowadays you hear things such as, hey, I'm gluten intolerant, things such as celiac disease. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, please keep in mind, okay, the body is responding to a foreign substance entering the blood. Protein is not supposed to enter the bloodstream like that. The amino acids are, not the protein. But because the protein molecules in gluten or grain-based products are very difficult to break, many a times they're able to slip through. And so for many people, this can be a life or death situation. Many studies actually link gluten to the initiation and progression of autoimmune diseases. As a matter of fact, studies have shown that gluten significantly increases intestinal permeability in celiac patients. Okay, in other words, leaky gut, which leads to inflammation, which is bad for your health. And so this triggers autoimmune responses. Some can call it celiac disease, wheat allergy. Others can have it manifest as irritable bowel syndrome. Others, inflammatory bowel disease. The point is, the consumption of these grains or these whole grains damages our gut tissue over time. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. I know they've told you that eating whole grains is the best thing in the world, and it's better than white bread and everything like that. But what they fail to let you know is what's happening with the gluten protein and their bonds. And because a lot of people have weak stomach acids, they are subject to these things. The other factor that we have to address, that I'd like for us to address, is industrial seed oils. Now, this is any oil that's extracted from vegetables. Now, they're often extracted from plants using either a chemical solvent or oil mill, and then they're purified and refined and even chemically altered. Okay, so these industrial seed oils have been said to be heart healthy. I know that, whenever I go to my local grocery store and I look at, the oil section, a lot of them are quick to say, heart healthy, approved by the American Heart Association, all of this stuff. But there's another aspect of things that we have to consider. So first of all, these industrial seed oils were not really consumed until the 1900s through the efforts of Procter and Gamble. They became more and more accepted in society through good marketing, through absolutely excellent marketing. But the truth is, vegetable oils seem to be a healthy source of fat, but what we have to look at is how the fat is obtained. That's what determines whether it's helpful or it's harmful. Okay, so for example, there is a ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 that ratio must be 1-to-1 in order to provide health benefits for the human body. The problem is in the Western diet today, the ratio is disrupted, and it may be as high as 20-to-1. Okay, this ratio actually leads to chronic inflammation. And so a lot of these industrial seed oils contribute to this ratio. A lot of these oils are actually high in omega-6. And so when we consume them, we're actually increasing that ratio. We're taking in all of this omega-6, but we don't have the omega-3 on a 1-to-1 ratio. That, ladies and gentlemen, causes inflammation within our bodies. Another thing to keep in mind is that whenever you look at a bottle of, let's say, a bottle of canola oil, there's an air gap between the top of the oil and the top of the bottle. Ladies and gentlemen, that air gap is actually oxidizing that oil. Here's what I mean by that. When oxidized oil is heated, it causes something, it produces something called trans fats, okay? And also lipid peroxides, both of which are absolutely detrimental. They're detrimental to your heart, they're detrimental in terms of your DNA, they're detrimental to the proteins found in your body. That's right. The air pocket found in those bottles, that air, that oxygen is causing, it's actually oxidizing the oil. So the longer it stays there, the more oxidized that oil will be. And so when you expose it to high heat, you're producing these dangerous chemicals that you are then ingesting. Okay. And so what causes oxidation? Well, we look at the fact that a lot of these oils are high in polyunsaturated fats. And so when they react with the oxygen, they begin to deteriorate. Now, of course, when you and I consume them, they are then used to make up our cell membranes. So this is another reason why a lot of people are sick, ladies and gentlemen. The cell membranes, which make us who we are physically, okay? We're building them up with damaged goods, okay? Damaged fats, okay? There's also the role of trans fats. Now, what I mean by that is this. Another step that a lot of oil makers use is called hydrogenation. This is where they're trying to harden the vegetable oil, okay? Now, oil makers will actually, as I stated earlier, oil makers will actually process a lot of these oils, a lot of these vegetable oil in order to make them, last longer or, smell better or maybe mask the horrible taste. And so they're adding all sorts of chemicals in these oils to make them more appealing to you and I, the consumer. Okay, so they're adding additives such as BHA, BHT, TBHQ in order to prevent oxidation and rancidity. The problem is all of these chemicals that they're adding on these oils, ladies and gentlemen, are absolutely harmful. As a matter of fact, studies have shown that they affect our endocrine system. They affect our immune response. They actually can lead to allergic reactions. So we're consuming all of this stuff unbeknownst to anybody. And so when things break down, we just naturally attribute it to age, but it's not. It's what we're eating and what we're not being told. It's good marketing, folks. Not to mention the fact that a lot of the seeds that are used to make many of these oils are actually coming from genetically modified organisms, genetically modified crops. For example, about 88% of the corn in the United States is genetically modified. 93% of the soy is genetically modified. 94% of the cotton is genetically modified. 93% of the rapeseed is genetically modified. And we're going to talk about genetically modified organisms in the upcoming slides. But just to let you know, as you look at the illustration right in front of you, many of those fats for diseases come from genetically modified crops. It's a lot cheaper. Okay. Now, another factor that we have to consider is that when a lot of these oils are heated, the heating actually depletes the vitamin E, which actually causes free radicals. Now, we're going to touch a little bit about that in the next couple of slides, but the thing to understand is that free radicals lead to oxidative stress, inflammation, the damage to our proteins, and even our DNA. Okay, so it's this whole cascading effect of one thing leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Okay, so let's move on. Refined sugars. Now, sugar is everywhere. Added sugar is everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. As a matter of fact, sugar is one of the most high addicting substances on the planet. Okay. In many cases, in many ways, it's more addicting than drugs, than hardcore drugs. Just take a look at the amount of sugar that we consume. In 1822, the average American consumed 9 grams of sugar a day. Today, the average American consumes 77 grams of sugar a day. And just to give you an illustration, 1 can of Coca-Cola has about 44 grams of added sugar. Now, if 1 can of Coca-Cola has about 44 grams of added sugar, how much should we consume? Well, according to the American Heart Association, men should consume no more than 38 grams of sugar, and women should consume no more than 25 grams of sugar a day. 1 can of Coca-Cola has 44 grams of added sugar. So why is sugar everywhere? Well, it's because sugar is really versatile. Of course, we know sugar adds to flavor. Anything sugar is added to will just taste better. But sugar is often used by food manufacturers because it's a bulking agent. It improves the texture of food. It can act as a preservative for longer shelf life. We know that it enhances flavor and taste. It can contribute to the color, such as in creme brulee. Sugar contributes to the viscosity of food products, such as its thickness. Sugar can also act as an anticoagulant, meaning it can make things into a semi-solid state. Think Jell-O. Okay, and the thing to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that even healthy foods can be high in sugar. Nutritional food labels won't always show total added sugar in a food product. Okay, and so keep in mind, as the illustration shows you, ladies and gentlemen, consuming excess sugar can negatively affect your body in many ways. Sugar is one of the most addicting substances on the brain, more addicting than many drugs. It can affect your eye health, it can affect your teeth, your heart, lead to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and even gout. Refined sugar is everywhere. If you could please just make sure you mute your phones, I would appreciate that, or mute your laptops. Thank you. Let's continue. So the other thing we have to consider, another factor that's making us sick, ladies and gentlemen, is processed foods, or even in this case, processed meats. Now, the thing is, processed meat is unhealthy. I know I'm not trying to get anybody to become a vegetarian. I know burgers are good and meat's good. People tend to get tense when we start talking about meat. I'm not, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to get you to quit. I'm just trying to get you to be more mindful. Okay, we have to understand something. Processed meat is generally meat that's been preserved by curing, salting, smoking, drying, or canning. Okay, now these are generally found, whether it's the deli or whether it's the, a Subway or, a sandwich shop. But this is where you can generally find meat that has been cured or meat that has been processed. Okay, now the thing to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that one of the things that are used as preservatives most frequently, most often, are nitrates. Okay, nitrates are actually used as a preservative for a lot of these meat products. Nitrates are used because they help preserve the color of the meat, they help improve the flavor, and they can actually help prevent bacterial growth. So what's the bad news? Well, ladies and gentlemen, when you heat these meat products, when you heat the nitrate in these meat products, it turns it into a cancer-causing substance called nitrosamines. Ladies and gentlemen, studies show nitrosamines, these compounds, increase the risk of cancer in your stomach and in your bowel. That's right. It increases your risk of cancer. Well, what about grilling? I mean, we've got a holiday coming up. Everybody loves to grill. Well, yeah, but you've got to understand that there are these compounds called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Now, these Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are formed whenever organic matter burns. So that means whether you're grilling something, whether you're frying or even smoking it. Now, of course, as you know, studies show polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons can cause cancer. Yes, they cause cancer. Well, there's another category of substances or compounds that we should be mindful of. They're called heterocyclic amines. Okay? Heterocyclic amines are substances or compounds that form whenever meat is cooked at a high temperature. Okay, especially for those of you when you think of, the steak with the grill marks on it. Oh, it looks good. It looks very well done. For those who love it when your meat is absolutely well done. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, whenever meat is cooked at a high temperature, these heterocyclic amines are going to be formed. And what do? Of course, you knew that. Studies have shown that heterocyclic amines cause cancer. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, these are carcinogenic compounds. Okay, whether the meat is preserved, okay, from the nitrates that are used to preserve these meats, having been linked to cancer, to when you burn these meats, yeah, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are linked to cancer. And whenever you cook it at a high temperature, especially if you want it really burnt or fried or deep fried, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, the heterocyclic amines are carcinogenic, which means that they are linked to cancer. Now, there is a way around this, folks. So I don't want it to be all gloom and doom. There is a way around it. For those of you who like your foods well done, well, try medium, or, it doesn't have to be burnt. How's that? Have it be cooked, have it be, cooked enough, but not burnt. You don't want these black marks on your meat. Okay. Uh, you know, Carcinogenic compounds can be minimized by using gentle cooking methods. Just avoid the whole well done thing, avoid like charred meat or blackened meat. Okay. Get it cooked, but not overcooked. Okay. Because again, a lot of compounds form when you overcook these things. And then when you consume them, you're increasing your risk of cancers and death. Just to give you an idea, if you look at the rates of cancers in the South, the deep South, and you compare it to the rates of cancer in the Western United States or even the Northeast, they're completely different. Why is that? Because in the deep South, everything is fried. Everything is fried. And so it's no longer a factor of your genetics. It's no longer a factor of, bad luck, why you got cancer, or, God testing your faith, or, the devil cursing you or something. Those things are thrown out the window when you consider the diet that they have. It's the diet, folks. It's always been the diet. Another factor that I want us to consider is carbonated beverages. Now, is carbonation healthy? What is carbonation anyways? Well, carbonation are these bubbles. Okay, carbonation is the fact that these carbon dioxide are present in the bubbles. So when you pour over a soda or a pop, as some people call it, you see these bubbles fizz up, cling to the side of the glass, or maybe float up to the top. They're full of carbon dioxide, ladies and gentlemen. Now, here's the thing to remember. The dissolved carbon dioxide is a gas, so a lot of these things will tend to float up. But the thing is, carbon dioxide in these bubbles will actually neutralize stomach acid. Remember, you want your stomach acid to have a low pH, which means it's very strong. It's able to do its job and break down foods so that you can absorb the nutrients in those foods. Now, there are certain factors or certain variables that can impede that. Okay, and one of which are carbon dioxide. Okay, they neutralize stomach acid, which means they take the stomach acid pH from being very low, which is what we want, to being more alkaline, which is what we don't want. Therefore, the stomach acid is not able to break down things like it normally should. Okay. Now, what do carbonated beverages do or cause on the body? Well, for example, because it's a gas, they can cause belching, bloating. Okay. And the gas can lead to flare ups of a lot of, gut inflammatory diseases such as irritable bowel syndrome. Okay. Now, people once wondered whether a lot of these sodas were linked to lower calcium, okay, or they cause calcium loss in the bones. The truth is no, they don't. However, what they found and what the study showed was that Coca-Cola product have something called phosphorus, and it's the phosphorus in these cola products that led to the increase in the loss of calcium via the kidney. Okay, so if you drink other carbonated beverages, you should be fine. It's not going to affect your bones. However, Coca-Cola, because they contain a cola product, because they contain the phosphorus there, they can actually lead to your body getting rid of the calcium that it actually needs. Okay, so if you can abstain from these cola beverages or drink water, it's up to you. The solution is really to avoid them, okay? Especially avoid them before a meal or during a meal. If you're gonna drink a carbonated beverage, drink it, hours after you ate or hours before you ate. You just don't want them in your stomach while the stomach acid is getting ready to digest something. Okay, so when they say, Pepsi goes great with, a hamburger, or Pepsi goes great with a hot dog, I'm here to tell you, no, it doesn't. No, it does not. Pepsi doesn't go great. Drink a Pepsi, fine, but drink it, by itself. Okay, but when you're eating, make sure you drink water. Okay, you don't want to drink a carbonated beverage. Okay, and of course, salt your food. A lot of people, when I tell them, hey, salt your food, they're like, no, salt is terrible. Salt is horrible. You're to be the salt of the earth, folks. Remember that, right? But the truth is, I don't want to, I didn't plan on going deeper into this, but there are different types of salts. Okay, there are table salts, which is, the one that has really been linked with all of this high blood pressure. Okay, but it's not the salt itself. It's not the sodium chloride component. Okay, because table salt is not just salt, ladies and gentlemen. It has several other ingredients, one of which is calcium silicate. Okay, and I would propose to you that the calcium silicate is the acting factor that actually contributes to the high blood pressure, okay, to the damages along your arteries, not the sodium chloride component of things. So I would encourage of you, if you wanted to eat salt, but make sure that it's healthy, it doesn't contribute to all of these diseases, consider sea salt, all natural sea salt. Okay, you're just getting the sodium chloride and maybe a couple extra minerals, but you're not getting that calcium silica. Okay, and of course, we have genetically modified foods or genetically modified organisms. Ladies and gentlemen, genetically modified organisms is the fact that now through technology we can take genes from one food or one crop type. We can take genes that we like and insert them in another food or in another crop type or even another animal that we want in order for that gene to have an effect on it. So for example, we can now grow crops in unfavorable weather. For example, something that's grown in the hot climate of Africa that isn't typically grown here in the United States due to our winters can now be grown here because we may take genes from something that's grown here and insert it into that product and grow. So essentially it's taking things from one product and inserting them in another product in order to confirm an ability or a benefit to it. So it sounds simple in practice, but it can get very complex. But in the West, okay, we use things such as toxic herbicides, Roundup, okay, that have these things that we use on a day-to-day basis, we're spraying these things all over, are actually, the wind blows and carries them all over. But of course, you have to understand, farmers use these things too. And so studies have actually shown that a product Roundup, has glyphosates. And glyphosates are actually considered detrimental to our health. As a matter of fact, glyphosate is a carcinogen, which means it causes cancer. So what's happening is, through good marketing and these guys have been able to get Congress to look the other way. And so now you have planes flying over farmland and spraying these things all over the crops. And these things don't just go away when you wash them in your kitchen sink. Many a times they are absorbed into the food product, into the fruit, into the vegetable that they're being sprayed over. And when you and I consume them, we're actually getting bits and pieces of these toxins into our system. Okay, genetically modified organism, okay, the consumption of genetically modified organism has been linked to 4 types of cancer, stroke, and even other diseases. Okay, there was a study that looked at 2 groups of rats, these lab rats. One group of rats, they were fed genetically modified corn, and the other group of rats were fed regular corn, and so this is known as the Seralini study, okay, on the effects of that rat feed has. And so they found that the rats that were fed GMO crops experienced liver damage, kidney damage, and heart damage. As a matter of fact, 60% of them developed cancers. Okay, so another point that I'd like to illustrate, as shown by the image here, is that genetically modified crops have been shown to damage the intestinal lining of our gut. Now, this is what was found in these rats. So we see that the intestine of rats fed non-GM corn or non-genetically modified corn, when we compare that to the intestine of rats that have been fed genetically modified corn, we see that the intestine of the rats that were fed regular corn are healthy, okay? Whereas the rats that have been fed genetically modified corn, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? You have erosions, fissures, and damaged cells. They are disrupted, okay? 80% of packaged foods in the United States contain some type of genetically modified food ingredient in there. As a matter of fact, 93% of the soy-based products that we consume are genetically modified. 93% of cotton in the United States is genetically modified. 90% of the canola seeds, hence canola oil, is genetically modified. 86% of corn, and so on and so forth. So finally, folks, how do we then fix the gut? Having covered all of these harmful things, these 6 categories of things that actually are detrimental to our health, the part of, aspects of the modern diet that are detrimental to our health, how do we then go about restoring it? Well, I would propose to you, folks, is that the first step is to understand it, is to know what's actually happening. A lot of people have no idea some of the things that we've just discussed. They don't know. They simply react to the disorders or the diseases. Okay? But when you know what the root cause of it, what's causing your cancer, what's causing your irritable bowel, what's causing your depression, when you can link it back to your gut, as Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. If you can study the gut, you can find the genesis of many of these diseases. Okay? So the first thing we've got to do is to restore stomach acid production. And we're going to do that by addressing the root causes of what factors are hindering our stomach acid from being produced. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to look into or get tested for H. pylori. Okay, these are those bacteria that are found in most people on Earth. As a matter of fact, whenever they're found and whenever they proliferate in your stomach, they tend to shut down stomach acid production. So we're going to get tested for that. Okay, and your doctor might put you on some sort of antibiotic to get rid of them. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to learn to manage stress. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, stress is the biggest reason why people are sick. Okay, it weakens your immune system, it affects your acid production, it impacts your nutrient absorption. Stress has got to be dealt with. And we've also got to avoid acid suppressing drugs. Now, they're good for a period of time. But if you're someone who takes an antacid or Pepcid or a Prilosec or Meprazole, Protonix all of the time, then you've got a problem that needs to be dealt with. Because you've got to understand that these are meant to be symptomatic. They are not meant to address the root cause. And so you've got to then address the root cause of your weak stomach acid. But you've got to have the right understanding of what's causing acid reflux. And so how do you do that? Once you have that understanding, you're then led to the fact that, hey, one of the things that you can do is you can supplement. You can take hydrochloric acid supplements along with pepsin, which is a digestive enzyme that helps break down proteins. As you can see from the illustration here, hydrochloric acid itself is not strong enough to break down proteins. And so when you have weak hydrochloric acid or weak stomach acid, you're going to have food sitting in your stomach for a long time. Bacteria love this because they're going to proliferate and they're going to ferment. And that gas is going to go up to your pyloric sphincter and burn your esophagus, giving you acid reflux. So when you add pepsin there, what you're doing is you're ensuring that your stomach acid goes to the acidic state. And so when you have pepsin and hydrochloric acid, you're able to fully break down and digest proteins. There are other things you can do. You can have bitters that can also stimulate acid production and even increase and improve digestion. So that's one of the first things you can do. Restore your stomach acid production. The next thing you can do is replace your digestive enzymes. So you can actually test for the pH of your stomach to determine if it's acidic enough. Ideally, you want a pH between 1.5 and 3.5. The lower it is, the stronger it is. The higher it is, the weaker your acid is. And so again, consider taking hydrochloric acid with pepsin enzyme. Okay, it allows for faster breakdown of proteins, carbs, and even fats in the stomach. Now, of course, there are other digestive enzymes such as amylase, lactase, lipase, protease, maltase, sucrase. So all of these enzymes can be found in some sort of over-the-counter digestive enzyme supplement. You can also include bitters or bitter herbs. They can also trigger production of digestive enzymes such as hydrochloric acid, bile, pepsin, gastrin, pancreatic enzymes. You can include apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, sauerkraut, ginger, even artichoke. All of these things can actually help improve your digestion by improving your body's ability to produce digestive enzymes. You can deal with the inflammation, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we talked a little bit about the inflammation, how when you have chronic infections, they damage and disrupt the gut, weakening the epithelials of the gut cells, making them more permeable or leaky gut was the term that I used. And so when they're leaky, things just slip right in and the body responds using chronic inflammation. And the chronic inflammation, depending where along the gut it takes place, will lead to some sort of disease. Now, what's the solution for all of this inflammation? Well, whenever you have a fire, you've got to be able to put out that fire. And so we are talking about the role of antioxidants. Now, antioxidants are molecules that fight free radicals in the body. They actually help neutralize these unstable molecules. Now, Antioxidants are usually found in foods, especially fruits, vegetables, plant-based, whole foods. Now, they're significant because these things we call free radicals are unstable molecules that can actually harm the body. And so if they are left unchecked, can lead to oxidative stress. And so it is then crucial, especially if you're someone who's constantly dealing with chronic inflammation and pains all over your body, it then becomes crucial to include as part of your diet, as part of your routine, antioxidants. Now, antioxidant can be found in various forms. You can find them in certain oils, you can find them in certain foods and fruits, you can find them in certain teas, and you can, of course, obtain them from certain vitamins. But the dietary intake of antioxidants is actually essential for optimal health. Okay? And certain vitamins actually are considered antioxidants, such as vitamin C, vitamins E, bioflavonoids, and a lot of teas. So these are things that we can do, ladies and gentlemen, in order to fix our gut by identifying the modern lifestyle and its impact on our health and taking proactive steps. We can address the root cause of a lot of these diseases. So I hope that you've learned something in this presentation. And as always, I love sharing this. This is one of my favorite quotes with regards to the Doctor of the Future by Thomas Edison. And it reads that the Doctor of the Future will give no medicine, but will interest her or his patients in the care of the human frame, in a proper diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. I would like to think in this hour that I've had you and I've had your attention, I've interested you in the care of your body. We've looked into the role of diet and nutrition and how they can cause disease and how they can prevent disease. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy weekends to give me this part of your lives. And so I hope that something may have been said to benefit you. And if you have any questions, this is where I would like to